Hey, hi, hello. So I'm coming back here with another quick watercolor tutorial. Today we're going to do a mountain, and I'm going to just use two colors again. So our paper, once more, is going to be Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I've got it in about a 4x4 piece of paper here, and I'm just covering it with a little bit of clean water. I like to use a spray bottle for this. Today's colors are going to be Quinacridone Magenta. We're just going to put that in one of those little wells, and I'm not using a lot, and Quinacridone Gold. This is not usually a color combination you see me use on my page a lot, but it's kind of starting to warm up, so I figure we start using it. I've got my number 4 long round brush. I've got my number 8 long round brush. And then I have my 0 squirrel hair brush, not a hairbrush for squirrels. We're going to start out actually doing our foreground. Normally I start with the sky, but today we're going to do our foreground, and we're only going to keep it to the lower third of our paper. So here we go. We're going to do just kind of sweeping side to side motions to create a little bit of a valley. What I'm going to want to do is have that mountain right in the center of our paper there. So the lower third is going to be for our foreground, and we're just going to kind of guide the eye more upwards. So we started with our initial pass on the foreground. Now we're going to do our first pass on the sky. I'm going to take that squirrel hairbrush and just start feathering in some water just to kind of give this a little bit more of a softer look in the sky. You'll see me start to do a little couple of passes here and there to just really draw the eye inward. So darker on the outside, lighter to the center. Now we're just going to come in and tap in some tree tufts. These are not pine trees. These are just going to be just kind of some everyday ideas of trees, because the foreground is not really going to be the focus of this painting. So we're going to keep them light, fluffy. We're not really going to put a lot of emphasis on them. I will say, to help create depth, we're going to keep the trees in the background smaller and lighter, and the trees in the foreground a lot darker and more defined. So I'm doing just a couple of small passes back there to add an even lighter and smaller still some in the very, very, very background. I'm just going to reinforce that ground a little bit more. This is only our first pass. We will come back as we work in some layers. So this is just our first pass, and we're just going to kind of feel it out, see what we think. Nothing is truly permanent, but we are trying to create that eye movement more towards the center of the page. So I am now going to reinforce that sky. Again, this is still was just the first initial spray of clean water on the paper, so we're doing all of this wet on wet. And again, I'm wanting the center to be the lightest and the edges to be the dark, like a vignette. Just kind of highlighting what's going to be the mountain in the middle. And I like to use that squirrel hairbrush just to lighten things up. So now I have skipped that part, but I like to use a heat gun to go ahead and dry my paper. I've re-wet the bottom half of the paper, so the top half is going to be dry, the bottom half is going to be wet, and that's going to help create a little bit of mist at the bottom of our page. Now I'm just coming in very, very lightly and very, very quickly. I like to move fast when I do mountains. Just the center of our mountain, the parts that are going to become the darkest in our mountain. So usually that's going to be your bottom, and then you can pick a side, one side or the other, to be your light side and one side to be your dark side to contain your shadows. Now we're going to start building our actual top of our mountain as we start going upward. Brush strokes are going to be on angles, starting from the center and moving to a point at the top, or starting from the top at a central point and moving wider to the bottom. And we're just getting an idea. I always start just a little bit smaller than what we think our mountain's going to be. And those are those brush strokes right there that I'm showing you. They're on an angle. getting a little bit of dry brushing in there, which creates a lot of fun little textures. And I leave some white in this mountain to indicate snow. I think I'm going to have the left side of this be my shadow side. So I'm just dry brushing, which is just letting the paper texture pick up the paint that is on my brush. My brush isn't overly wet, and I'm just kind of letting that just kind of happen. A little bit of dry brushing action in there, and also just showing how I'm reinforcing the darker areas now, just to really get that good contrast going. So again, right side I think is going to end up being our heavy snow side and very light side. Sun's probably on the right, so I'm just going to reinforce some of the darker areas on the right side, come back in and really reinforce dark areas on the left. The whole left side's going to end up being a little bit darker than the right, and I'm going to use the squirrel hair brush again just to feather out, give us a little bit of an ethereal look. Little bit of a mist, if you will. Then I'm going to use that and make a wash right over top of what's going to be my snow in there, just to create that shadow, that illusion of a shadow. So I think we're in a good spot here with this mountain. Just going to reinforce one last time, just making sure I'm creating that contrast to help it really stand out, be the focal point of this painting. You know, we want our mountains to really stand out in this one. All right, we're going to dry it with that heat gun. I'm coming back in and just re-wetting the foreground. I felt like the foreground was a little too light, like the mountain was just kind of stamped into a picture and not really part of it. So I've just come back in and I'm reinforcing the foreground just slightly. Also helps give us a little bit of depth as the trees can overlap. And this again is how I'm doing my trees, just light little taps with the brush, letting the wet on wet technique and the paint do its thing. And as I go along, I thicken up my paint just slightly to create some depth and dimension and shadow so it doesn't spread as much and it carries a lot more of that color through. And this is starting to feel more like a cohesive piece, like the mountain belongs there with the trees and they're all kind of communicating with each other. Again, this is the most immediate foreground, so it's going to be the darkest, largest trees. The background there is going to have lighter, smaller trees. And we're crisscrossing them in this valley formation just to give the indication that we were coming up to this mountain. Also to help draw the eye towards the mountain. The sky, the way we've done the sky and the way we're doing this crisscross layering here, it all kind of draws your eye naturally to that mountain. So we're again gonna just dry it. That also helps release the tape. We're gonna pull our tape up, sign your name, and there you have it. You've got an amazing painting. If you like this tutorial and you want to continue supporting me, you can check out some of the links in my bio with some of the Buy Me a Coffee or even buy a painting, if you will, from my website. Thanks and happy painting.